Good. All right, start with attendance. Commissioner Briscoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard. Here. Commissioner Bell is here. We're going to begin today's meeting with I'm going to announce the committees first, and then we'll go to public comment if you don't mind. We've got our advisory committee meeting scheduled. We've got the Marine Advisory Committee for February 13th at 6 p.m. That'll be here in the Mount Baker Conference Room. And our Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, our BIAC, is going to be April 18th at 4 p.m. That is, missed the last one, a little bit of snow out there, right, Kip? So that'll be, again, on the April 18th at 4 p.m. out at the ARF building. There's also a Zoom link if you go to our website. All right, with that, we'll go to our public comment period. I have two people here. That doesn't mean that you're restricted from speaking. Anybody wishing to speak, please feel free to do so. And as usual, just respect the opinion of the person at the microphone. You wouldn't want them booing you or catcalling you if you were at the microphone. Just respect their opinion, let them speak without comment, and we'll take it all in. I'll start with Gary Mulyak. Is that right? Please.
Hi, I'm Gary
Malik?
Malik, live in Whatcom County. First, I want to start out with a compliment that last weekend, the festival that was down at the old GP site, the Fire and Story, excellent festival, and thanks for opening up that property if you had something to do with it. I'm here to comment on, recently you had your recreation, conservation, and public access plan on your website, and what I wanted to make a comment about is the area out there on Marine Drive that would border on Marine Drive, what's called the Lockwood property from the Bellingham Parks Department, and establishment of a multimodal trail through there for bikes and pedestrians that would link from there up to Cope Road and on over to Slater. That was mentioned on your website. I think that's an excellent idea. In that area of town, I live in that area, we don't have much in the way of any place to safely walk, no sidewalks, anything like that. I really like your Cliffside Park that's over there, but we can't get to it without walking along Marine Drive, which has no pedestrian facilities. And I think over the years, there's been some pushback. I don't know where it was coming from the airport or wherever, but I think being that already existing road is outside of the airport fence proper, wouldn't be much investment, wouldn't be a security risk, and actually having more eyes in that area, people walking their dogs, that kind of thing would add to the safety. So I hope that the folks that are going to be making those decisions would take that into account. How am I doing on time?
Good.
So one more thing. I was recently reading the Whatcom County Master Plan that's under review. And in there, under Area 6F, they talk about development of a system of bicycle and pedestrian facilities that encourages, enhances community access and promotes healthy lifestyles and supports recreational activities for our economy. And under there, it exactly talks about something like this: an effective bicycle and pedestrian system for Whatcom County will require facilities for both regional connectivity and local access. If we establish that multimodal trail through there, that would be well on our way to connecting Bellingham to Ferndale for folks that ride bikes or walk. So hope you take that into mind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Dan Tucker.
Dan Tucker with the Whatcom Working Waterfront Coalition. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to let you all know that we've decided to host our annual fundraising and auction gala this year for the coalition, and I'd like to invite everyone in the room to attend. It's going to be on April 20th at the wonderful Bellingham Cruise Terminal in the Dome Room. So hope to see you all there, and that's all I have.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to comment on anything else before the commission or not before the commission? Yes, sir. Would you come to the microphone and identify yourself?
Riley Sweeney, Community Relations, ABC Recycling. I just wanted to mention that I too came to the Fire and Story event. I brought my eldest. We had a great time. I really want one of those spinny fire things for my backyard. I'm sure they're marvelously expensive, but it was amazing. And it just goes to show that we can have it all. We can have family wage jobs and recreation side by side working together to support our city. So thank you for all your work putting that on. It's a great example of what our waterfront can do.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Carrie, if you would.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Mr. Shepherd, do you have any comments?
I don't.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I have none.
And I have none.
All right, motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Shepherd? Yes. Commissioner Bell is a yes. Okay, moving on to our presentation, Waterfront District Update. Brian?
All right. Thanks, Commissioners. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Gower. I'm the Environmental and Planning Director for the Port of Bellingham. So this is one of our kind of reoccurring, we were kind of doing them quarterly for a while, the Waterfront District Updates, just generally what's happening. And I knew it had been a little while, but when I look back at the last time, it was actually in January of last year. So it's been almost over a full year since we've done kind of just one of these general Waterfront District Updates. So we're got a fair amount to go through, a relatively brief presentation, but it is the only thing on the agenda. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask as I'm going along. Happy to address anything that we go through. So I'll go ahead and jump in here. I guess before that, just really quick, and looking back at the last one that I did present, Commissioner Bell explicitly kind of called out and said, "Hey, this is great. These great summaries of what you've been doing, but looking for some early input and feedback from the commission on things that are being planned." And so this one is broken up a little half and half. So we've got a number of things just to kind of highlight the work that's gone on over the past year, some of the partnerships, but then we actually have three pretty significant projects that are early in the planning phases that will be coming back to the commission more regularly, engaging the community on, and they'll be over the course of the next year. So this is kind of the precursor, first look at some of those early planning projects. So not a lot of detail on those because they're early, but that's kind of just the more and more will be coming your way as we go through the course of the year. So just a really quick one on here. Just the Commission's well aware of this, but I'd like to remind folks that the Waterfront District, is much more than just the downtown waterfront and the former GP mill site that you can see from the bridge. It's actually, goes from the I&J waterway here through the marine trades area. It's about 50 acres plus there, and then plus another 30 acres or so of the former ASB or Area Stabilization Basin treatment lagoon. Includes the Whatcom waterway. Navigational channel. It includes then the downtown waterfront, which is the mixed use kind of condos, residential, retail, restaurants, that kind of thing. And then into the log pond, which is reserved for our industrial uses to support the Bellingham shipping terminal. And then also down at the south end here is the Cornwall Beach area, which is now been renamed as the Salish Landing Park. So that's it's a significant amount of area and with a variety of different uses. And we got a lot of work over the next number of years to kind of continue to work on this. So what I was going to go through today was just a bit of the recent work that we have either completed or is underway. Talk a bit about Paper Whale and the events they've done. The Portal Container Village, the phase 2 of that, and where we are there. Mercy Housing Northwest, Board Mill, and then the Bellingham Shipping Terminal dredging and modernization work that's underway right now. Then I'll transition into the kind of planning efforts and the things that are coming and the next steps there. We've got a significant amount of work on the marine trades cleanup and redevelopment work, including the ASB. We'll have an interlocal agreement with the City of Bellingham, a modification of that's going to be coming to the Commission here in the next month or two that is related to the Board Mill project. And then we just have a very, very brief kind of overview of some other projects that we're just getting going on, including some transitional buildings between the Board Mill and the log pond. And then some stormwater and infrastructure planning that goes along with that, anticipating that when the ASB comes offline, we need to have replacement infrastructure to facilitate all the stormwater that's currently being pumped over to the ASB. So a lot to go through. So this is the paper whale slide. We've had for the past couple of years, we've had a great working relationship and partnership and collaboration with Paper Whale, which is a kind of an artists collective that we had been working with to come up with some early ideas on how to activate the waterfront that brings kind of creative ideas to the table. Things like temporary art installations, events, other things like that. And they've had an ongoing lecture series that are free to folks to attend. They bring in artists from all over the country, the Northwest, the Pacific Islands, to speak about their experience and then inspire local artists to come up with ideas on how to do things here. Then they curated like 12 or 13 ideas that could be implemented over the next year or two with the port and other funding partners to kind of implement. And we've, as staff, have kicked that around, and the first two that we selected to implement, probably because they were the easiest, were these two events. One was the Noisy Waters Mural Festival, which was this summer. Really well attended. We didn't know what to expect, what was going to happen here, and it just was a beautiful weekend. Tons of people came out, saw artists, painting murals on the mural wall that was along the condo project, the kind of the temporary wall there, as well as murals that were set up in this kind of staging area that are still actually available for purchase by artists from all over the country. And then people voted on which ones of those would be selected as the kind of their favorites. And then two of those artists got local funding to do permanent installations here this summer. So a really, really cool event with just really great creative folks pulling some stuff together. And then this image down at the bottom right here was actually the only permanent installation that came out of that, which was the Indigiverse mural, which was actually, I think, 7 different tribal members from different tribes across the country came together, and kind of the first ever combined tribal influenced art with different influences, Coast Salish, Southwest, and they really came together with a really unique and probably nowhere else are you going to see anything like that painting, which is great. And then the other event that we had was the one that was just mentioned was this last weekend, was the Fire and Story event, which was the idea of how to get that enthusiasm. People want to come out down to the waterfront during summer when the trackside's open, the pump track's going, but it shuts down quite a bit in the winter, and don't have permanent residences there. We don't have other things. We wanted to see how we could activate that in the darkest time of the year, and came up with this really cool idea to get artists to fabricate these unique fire pits, have storytellers and music and performers with these really unique illuminated areas that would just light up the waterfront and bring people down. And we knew that people from here are hardy enough to kind of weather most things and would go out and do that. And coincidentally got snow too, which added just a whole nother layer of like complexity to the first night, because not many people came out and the food trucks didn't show up, the bathrooms didn't show up, but there were still like 400 people that came down to hear stories and hang out by the fire. Then the Saturday and Sunday, there was like 1,500 to 2,000 people each night down there. And the snow made it just really beautiful. It was a really, really interesting event that a lot of people have had nothing but great feedback on from what we've heard. So really great partnership, and just going to look for more opportunities like that. And then the other things that we'll continue to work them on, Carrie and the interim uses team is working with Paper Whale to help design some of the container wraps for the new containers, which I'll talk about, but also some of the existing containers down there, getting other like local artists to come up with interesting designs for that. And then we're continuing to look for opportunities for other temporary art installations down in the waterfront. So great partnership, and we're looking for other ways to continue to work with them. And they've done a great job of kind of finding other funding sources, other partners, bringing other money to the table to kind of leverage what the port has contributed to making these bigger and better than they could be with just us alone. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a plug. It was a really fun event. Unique, fun, different than other types of events we see, and the fact that it was free and really family accessible. Yeah, I've heard from numerous families who have really expressed how much they appreciate that. Given things cost a lot, it's hard to do things with your family that are easily affordable and accessible. And so this really hit a whole bunch of different boxes. Right. And I think that opportunity for families to be able to get together, do something easy, do something that's enjoyable and low cost, really, I feel like we really stepped up to help make that possible.
Yeah. And I would say this also, I noted there was a number of people that came in from out of town. I mean, there were people that said, well, I saw a lot of local folks that did walk their families down there, but they were also keeping track of trying to find out how many people had come in from out of town. And a number of people, like some people come up from Portland. There was somebody from Anacortes, like, I don't have anything else to do. This looks super cool. I'm coming up and then spent the night here. So it's also, it is an economic development tourist related event when they get traction like that. And this is this be the first year for both these events and having that kind of turnout, it's pretty impressive.
I agree.
Cool. The other one here I kind of mentioned here is the Portal Container Village Phase 2. So we got a lot of work going on in the Portal to hopefully get this ready for the next season here coming in May and June of this year. So we are expanding the restrooms. So there's currently a 2-stall restroom down there that is just not, it's so popular, we need more. So we're actually going to swap that out for a larger, I think it's a 10-stall restroom. The same thing, prefabricated offsite. It's under construction right now, offsite. They'll crane it in and drop it, plumb it up, and then we'll actually be able to relocate that existing one. It doesn't, we can reuse it at another location. We can move it over to the Fisherman's Pavilion or over, somewhere else in the waterfront. So it's prefab, so it's able to do that, which is again kind of a symbol to what we're doing down there with these temporary structures, even though they're not, mobile, like you wouldn't pick it up and move it on a trailer. It takes some work, but these are temporary installations that we can adjust as we move through the process and we figure out what works and what doesn't work. There's multiple containers that are actually under construction now for the next phase. So the Zeke's Pizza is going to be down there starting this summer. Bin 13 Wine Bar as well. And then we're going to have another rotating artist and retail container. That we have one that's under part of the existing arch now that's just for retail or artists that maybe don't have a storefront or a shop, that they can come down there for a week, rent that space relatively inexpensively, continue to do their art, have a bigger footprint, have people see them. Really enjoying that. And we've had as soon as we put that out, the list filled up immediately. So we're like, well, we should get another one of those. So going to see those, and then these will also be wrapped and with an artistic look to them as well. We're also working on some additional ADA accessible paths down there, and then the container wraps, and then. Kind of the last piece right now is that we're preparing to go out to bid on some of the maintenance on the digesters. We had a structural analysis and a lead-based paint analysis. And the recommendation was because these weren't really made to be outside, they originally had a shell of a building around them, that we are starting to see that paint come off. So we're going to go ahead and go through the process of getting that paint abated. It'll likely just be sandblasted off. It'll all be contained and collected, and then we'll just have kind of that rusty patina that'll looks more like the acid ball.
Did it test positive for lead?
Yeah, it is lead-based paint. Yeah. So there's no risk to the human health and the environment or anything with the condition it is in, but just knowing that it's getting more and more popular to be down there, we should go ahead and step up and go ahead and take care of that now. So that should be going out to bid here in the next week or two, and then the goal is to get it done during the wet season and have that done and wrapped up. Hopefully, it'll be all the scaffolding and anything that needs to be around it will be taken down by the time that the Container Village opens up this spring. Yeah.
So, what color?
For the digesters, rust. Yeah, we're just going rusty for now. We're just taking the lead-based paint off, and then there's enough of a metal that metal's thick enough that kind of like the acid ball, it can just rust. Okay, it doesn't mean we couldn't paint them in the future. Right now, we just wanted to get the paint off, and that was the goal. Because I think there'll be a lot of opinions about what we should do other than that. So we decided let's just get the paint off, and then we'll go from there. So
at what point does the city intervene and say that we need to have more extensive sewage and services down there?
Well, right now,
are we hitting that threshold?
No, not really. I mean, we've had pretty good luck talking to them about these are temporary facilities. There's capacity. We meet all the code. So all that's fine. I think their bigger concern would be, how temporary are these really? Like, does this go through more of a review? But everybody seems to think that this is really, it's so successful, so popular that there's not a problem here, and we've got enough property to work with over the long term on long-term development that there's not a push for something that this is taking up that could be doing something else. So city's team has been really, really impressed and on board with this for years now. So another project that's really exciting is the Mercy Housing Northwest at Millworks affordable housing project. This is, going to be the first project that is open with new residential people living in the waterfront district, and it's an affordable housing project, which is really impressive. I think walking through this in a second here, I mean, I got an update from the Mercy folks just to get a snapshot of where they're at, and it is something we all should be really proud of. It's an amazing project to be that we were able to help this slice of our population. So there's 83 units of affordable housing in that building. There's 6 classroom early learning center. They're currently accepting applications, so that's a huge win. So this is a snapshot from the website. They're taking applications for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, and this is going to serve folks that are at the 50 to 60% of the average mean income of our community, and it's a much needed part of our housing needs. The rents are going to range from about $870 to about $1,400 monthly, and there's actually a maximum income that people will be eligible for this, and so that ranges from about $33,000 a year to $66,000 a year for a 6-person family. So I mean, this is a part of the community that needs this housing, and they also will have a few units reserved for people coming out of homelessness. So really, extremely low income folks, and there's a process for all that. So they have a great reputation for managing their properties. They have properties throughout Bellingham and throughout the Northwest, and they all have the early learning class centers, which will be managed by the YMCA, and there'll be on-site services, classrooms, like after-school tutoring, a bunch of services that will go along with this facility. So really exciting part of the waterfront, and they're on track and for having people moving in April of this year. There'll be probably some community events, ribbon cutting, grand opening type of thing in the spring and summer. So we'll keep the commission informed on that, and that's, I'm sure, something you'd want to attend. On the across the street from there is the Board Mill block. Not too much of an update there, just to keep you just a brief one, since we are going to talk about the interlocal agreement in a minute that will come out that'll kind of related to this project. But the Board Mill project continues to move forward. A few months ago, the commission approved their concept design, which then they had a time frame for submitting their design review package to the city of Bellingham in December. They accomplished that, met that target and that time frame, and now the city is underway with their design review process. They had, I think, throughout the holidays, their design review board took a little bit of a break. We're waiting to get the time frame for when that's going to be scheduled for their design review. Then there's land use review as well. So they're in the start of kind of a 6 to 8 month process right now. We'll anticipate there'll be some feedback and comments that will then tweak things and revise things a little bit more. But they're really on track. There was some concerns about interest rates, so we've been working with them on their financing. That's all looking good. I think this slowdown with the process a little bit, actually, they're feeling a lot better about how interest rates are going. So every word we've got from them is there's no change in sight for their project, and they're really looking forward to continuing that one moving forward. There will be a interlocal agreement that I'll talk about in a minute that's related to this project, where the proposed project impacted some of what was in the master plan was slated for parks. So we have been working with the Board Mill Group and with the city to tweak that a little bit to provide some better access that the city always wanted, and that it works better with the Board Mill project. So it's a kind of a win-win thing that we'll be bringing forward to the commission and the city council here in the next month or so. And I'll have a slide on that in a minute that shows more detail. The other project that's underway right now is the Bellingham Shipping Terminal Dredging and Modernization Project. That's one of our largest projects we've undertaken in years. It's a $27.5 million project that's going to be completed in multiple phases through next year and into 2025. It's a maintenance project primarily. It also dovetails with the environmental cleanup work in the Whatcom Waterway. So it's a dredging project that removes contaminated sediment from the Whatcom Waterway, but it also provides maintenance dredging that provides the adequate depth that we need at the berthing area. So we're actually, I'll talk about it here in just a little minute, but we did award that contract, and they're scheduled to start dredging next week. Because of the tight time frame for the fish window and when we're allowed to work, we do anticipate that it's going to be nighttime work and probably potentially 24/7 for that dredging work. The good news there is that it's a relatively quiet activity. There'll be lights on the derrick and on the dredger at night, but this is kind of a whir of a crane, not pile driving or heavy work throughout the night. But just a heads up, and we will be doing some outreach, just letting community folks know that that's work that's going to be happening in case there's any curiosity. Our team is working on pulling that together, and the BST team's working on that, and they'll, I'm sure, share that with the commission in case you get any questions. So,
Brian,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
How long is the dredging supposed to last?
Well, this is just the first phase of dredging, actually, and that's a good segue. So, what our main goal for this first phase, that's between next week and mid-February, is just to really dredge this. If you can see this, so I'll get some context here. So, this is the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. Here's Warehouse 2, Warehouse 1. This is the deck. Then all this area is out in the water. So there's some sloughing that has happened from underneath this slope below the deck that has allowed the ships not to berth directly up against it. So they have to be offset by 10 or 15 feet, which is hard on their gear. It actually creates more of an environmental hazard or risk, So it's better to have that ship as close to the berth as possible, or close to the deck as possible. So the main focus is to dredge this kind of little strip here along the face, which will allow that to happen. There'll be additional dredging out here in the other brown part that'll be into next year. So it's a multi-phase project. So with that dredging, then the other part is that they'll actually be removing some of the decking. This is next year, installing new piles. So there will be pile driving there, and then upgrading that deck, which not only has more load capacity, but is actually tilted backwards. So from a stormwater management perspective, it's a significant upgrade because now all the stormwater runs off the deck, but it goes through some treatment units, but they're kind of small, they get banged up. So by tilting the deck backwards into a collection system that then goes through a bigger and really robust treatment system that we can have sample ports on, and we can sample the water post-treatment, really great for the stormwater upgrade. So that's a big part of what we're accomplishing with this as well. So that'll happen next year when we get into the next fish window for work. That all those improvements then support our current tenants, our current cargo operations, but also makes us attractive for future cargo that are kind of questioning, oh, do we have the right deck capacity? Do we, can we get right up to the berth? Does it work? So this is a really big upgrade for the Bellingham Shipping Terminal.
And Brian, just to clarify, you mentioned it. We're dredging for contamination from past operations. That contamination goes back to Georgia Pacific operations.
Right.
Nothing that's currently occurring in the community.
That's right. Yeah, great clarification. Yeah, thanks for that. That it actually is. Yeah, this is when I said cleanup dredging for environmental purposes. It's actually the Department of Ecology rolled this work into our Whatcom Waterway consent decree, which we are doing this for the Whatcom Waterway cleanup, which is related to former GP operations, primarily mercury and phenolic compounds, which is all from the previous operations. Yeah, the questions of stormwater exceedances of benchmarks that we've seen at some of our stormwater permits, they're nowhere near. This is not like a sediment contamination scenario. This is a little bit of water quality that we need to get our hands around, and not a full-fledged chemical plant that was discharging contaminated wastewater before the Clean Water Act was ever in place. So that's the kind of the difference of what we're talking about when we look at those things. Yeah.
And I think we've discussed previously, this is the kind of final in-water cleanup that we expect for contamination related to the Georgia Pacific operations.
That's right, in this area. And actually, it's a good segue to another slide I have that shows kind of how these overlap. So we did phase 1 work, which actually you can see this basin here was part of the Whatcom Waterway phase 1 work, which was done in 2016. We'll have this work right now, which is kind of a maintenance / environmental cleanup. And then I'll show you a slide that goes into phase 2, which will take care of the rest of it. So yeah, so actually that's the perfect timing. So that's kind of the summary. There's been a lot of other things. There's a lot of other things going on, a lot of great stuff. But those are kind of the highlights for what we have either immediately in front of us or recently wrapped up. So now this is kind of transitioning into the upcoming work that's going to take a lot more commission involvement, a lot more community involvement, city process, and other elements like that. So the first one is the expansion of the marine trades area, and specifically the Aerated Stabilization Basin, or ASB. Then I'll talk a little bit about the ILA, Interlocal Agreement, a modification. And then these other ones, which I just kind of have a figure that, and I'll kind of just point on it, that shows we're doing some planning for transitional buildings in the log pond between the board mill area and the log pond industrial area, as well as then the stormwater and access to the Bellingham Shipping Terminal that we're going to have to kind of couple together. So this is that figure I had mentioned. This is you've seen this before, but this is just a reminder. So as we start talking about the Whatcom Waterway Phase 2 environmental cleanup work, The key elements of that are to dredge the rest of the contaminated material that requires dredging in the Whatcom waterway. So what this shows here is the former, or the ASB right here. The first step would be to build a wall. This isn't the exact alignment, and you'll see that in another image here, but to build a containment wall, dredge the sediment that's in the ASB now, put that behind that wall, dredge the rest of the Whatcom waterway federal channel, as well as areas in the inner waterway, and put all that material behind that wall and create a confined disposal facility. That's been blessed by the Department of Ecology. We amended the consent decree last fall, and that's now the officially adopted environmental cleanup project for Whatcom Waterway Phase 2. So that with that consent decree amendment, that allowed us to now to step into the more detailed design. So this is still the concept. Right now, we've amended our contract with our consultant, and we're starting to work on the much more detailed design of this cleanup. And this is going to take some time. We're going to be coming back to the commission with a lot of that information here as well. So, and then, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, this one here. It is. It's one of those where it wasn't required by the Department of Ecology. There was some benefit if we were able to dredge that area for a couple things. Would be there's some habitat improvements that could be done there. There's some erosion that tends to happen there because that's right where the creek comes out, and so there's just questions on if we had the opportunity, should we go and dredge that and put it in the ASB just to address it? But we hadn't budgeted for that. That wasn't something that we had. So we were looking for other funding sources for that. There's habitat money. There may be other sources. So right now we just didn't want to commit to it with the Department of Ecology because it's not directly required, but everybody saw some benefit in it. So we just put that in the cleanup action plan to say we'll do that work if we can find a funding source or if we just decide to do it. So that's that. It's just that it wasn't required by the Department of Ecology at this point.
How many square feet is that, do you know?
I don't, but I can get it.
Okay, I'm just curious. No, I think we should clean that up. I grew up right there, and I know that bubbled just like everything else did from all the
yes,
stuff.
yeah.
There, so it should be cleaned up.
Okay. Well, right now it is contained. It is capped, but
Right,
I hear
right.
you. I hear you. I don't think that's a bad idea either. That's why it's in there. Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't clean the whole thing all the way out.
Sure.
That just doesn't make sense.
Okay. Noted. Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Okay. And then this is a rendering you've seen as well. This is kind of just another one that showed kind of a concept of what this could look like when we build that containment wall, build the confined disposal facility. But then what that actually does is not just the cleanup, but then that creates this potential for expansion of the marine trades area. So that whole peninsula out here is all from the waterfront district. That's our marine trades area. That's for boat builders. It's for marine manufacturing, all that type of work. That's what it's in the master plan is called out as. And this is an opportunity then to have an expansion of that. You rarely would ever get this kind of opportunity to have 14 to 17 acres of new waterfront, water accessible property for marine trades. It usually goes the opposite direction. You see it in South Lake Union, other areas like that where that's getting pushed out. And so this is we've done a lot of work over the past few years with the marine trades folks, with the Working Waterfront Coalition, our tenants down here, and it got a lot of support across the community. So this is now stepping into the land use side of things. So we have the cleanup approval that's been done. Now we need to kickstart some of the land use planning and programming, and that's going to have a process with it. So, and what that will look like is this is the first concept of that. We've started to work on how to program that, how to get circulation, what types of roads need to be in there for accessibility. How do you want that wall actually aligned? We've done some initial work with the commissioners individually, and we've landed on some preliminary decisions, which were to start with actually angling this wall this direction, which will allow for better navigation, parallels that outside wall, doesn't create kind of weird corners up at the top there. And actually, Commissioner Briscoe pointed out that the larger vessels then can come right in here and side berth right against this. So a lot of really good advantages to this. What this doesn't do is talk about where floats are, where like lifts are, any of that kind of detail yet. We're nowhere near that level. And so the next steps for us are to take this and start the sub-area plan or the master plan amendment process, which will say, because in the waterfront district, this is not land right yet. So we need to go through the process with the city to get this area rolled into the master plan. And so all of the land use zoning, how we can use it, those types of things. So in parallel to the detailed decisions that I can tell Commissioner Briscoe wants to jump right to, we need to start doing some of the land use planning that is much broader, like, okay, marine trades, industrial uses, that type of thing. So this is what this figure does show is just kind of initial staff work to show how circulation patterns could work here, how you could access the wall, some options for maybe extended barge berthing out into the waterway, and then a few other things like that. What it doesn't show, which we will need to do, is address the parks and public open space. We have some commitments under our interlocal agreement with the city on providing certain acreages of park property. We didn't want to confuse the issue and throw it too far, but we will have to work directly with the city team, our tenants, other users on how to make sure that there are, we can agree to how to program this for some parks and public open space. And we've got a lot of ideas, more to come on that, but I didn't want to get distracted with that discussion here tonight because there's more to come. This is just more high level that we're going to be initiating some coordination with the city on the sub-area plan amendment process. Same thing would go for the marine trades infrastructure, the types of lifts, what kind of berthing do you need? We want to work closely with the commission, tenants, and stakeholders on those levels of details as well. So,
I only wanted you to explain the little blue lines over there so people understood what that was going across there.
I was just giving you a hard time. Apologies for that. And yeah, what this also shows here is that this was kind of blocking. It says fish passage. So this is one of the permitting elements of this. You know, this is going to take a lot of work from not just from the land use, but from permitting, from the cleanup. So a lot of coordinated work. So in order to get this permittable, we also need to make sure that it's fish friendly, it's habitat friendly, it works with the land use. And so one of the elements that we've known for lots of years is that out here in front of this beach, there's a really great eelgrass bed, and there's good fish migration in and around and up Whatcom Creek. And that also that this interior or this exterior part of the breakwater is really high energy. So it's hard to have a shallow area where eelgrass can grow or a slope that will stay because it just gets washed away because you have to engineer it with big rocks, but the fish don't like that. So having this interior pathway for fish to come in a protected environment is one of the elements that we're looking at. And the details of that are still be worked out, but we anticipate some kind of fish passage in that area. It'll be engineered to make sure that there isn't, wave refraction that comes in here. It'd be, the details still have yet to be worked out. But that can be everything from a small opening, probably not a culvert, but maybe something close to that size even. So to be determined still.
But you anticipate still having a walking path on the top?
Yeah, that's anticipated that would be part, and that's what's currently shown in the master plan is that the breakwater is a public access piece. So we anticipate maintaining that as well. But more to come on that too, just because we've got, make sure that it works with the land use assumptions and the Parks Department and all the stakeholders.
What about that? I know you said you don't want to talk about
No,
parks,
that's fine.
but it seems like, there's a opportunity for some connectivity for the ASB trail with the little pocket beach over there.
Oh yeah. I think that I mean this there currently is this trail that does wrap around.
Yeah.
You could turn this just even though it shows it a road, you could have a trail along the side of that. We anticipate that if this is a road, this is probably a future phase. Like it's not needed now. It's just to show that if the demand was there, you could add that leg, and that you could still have a public access trail around that for sure. And then that this beach here I think is a great existing public access, and seeing how to expand that and make that where the people that we want to keep them out of the marine trades area for safety purposes, but close enough that they can see it and observe it, but not get in the mix, right? And that's a great beach that is probably going to be it's going to be retained for years anyway. One thing I guess just throw in there that won't happen is public access all the way around, because you have this opening here. And you're going to be coming back into the marine trades area. So I know that's one of the questions that comes up often. Hey, let's make this a loop, but that's going to be opened up and it's not really going to be accessible for a loop. So this is a flow chart that kind of shows. You've seen these before. The last time we did a sub-area plan amendment. This is a simplified version of that, but really just to kind of show that It is an extensive process to go through a sub-area plan amendment. It's a city legislative process, and it'll take all of this coming year and into 2025. It'll take a lot of port and city staff time. There'll be multiple updates and stakeholder engagement. We'll have to update the EIS. There'll be public meetings with the Port Commission, the Planning Commission, the City Council, and we are currently working right now with our marine trades stakeholders, our current tenants, and city staff on kind of queuing this up. And we're going to do more public outreach here in Q1 and Q2 just to really start to get the conversation going about this. We've been talking about it for quite a while, so I don't think it's a big surprise to too many folks. The key dates here is that there is an April 1st, 2024 sub-area plan amendment application deadline. So we'll get our application in for this amendment by April 1st. Last time we did this, we had a fully redlined version. It was a full document. We're going to go for a much simpler application, and the work is going to continue over through the next year. There'll be a May or June timeframe city council decision on what they want to include in docketing. So they'll decide if they want to take this application. So we'll have that. I think if we do all of our groundwork up front, that should be approved. Then there's a city staff and planning commission process. That's over the summer. And then into the fall, the Port Commission and the City Council will consider adopting the package of documents. That'll include the sub-area plan amendment. It'll include the interlocal agreement, the planned action ordinance. There's a whole package of documents that'll go forward. And then finally, the city takes, because there's other applications that may come in for other areas of the city. And then finally, in the summer of 2025, they would adopt all of those applications, all those into their new comp plan. So, like I said, it's a 1.5 year long process, and it's going to take kind of focused drive and effort to push this through. But that's what will allow us to actually then start using that land when it is built. So, I guess before the last two, I got any questions on the kind of marine trades planning or sub-area plan amendment?
No, I'm going to go easy on you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Well, sure, we're still going to need to have some discussions with the tribes and get all those approvals in place too, correct? And
That's right.
forthcoming.
Yep, and that we're working on that as well. So yeah, that's a big part of this. Any federal permit that we would need to get would need to be part of that process. Yeah, and this is going to require an individual permit. So it's not even a cleanup. It's not just a cleanup project. It's going to require an individual permit.
As well as their presence there in the ASB.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully there'll be a presence there for the lamination. So, okay, so then this goes back to what I talked about before. I didn't have a great figure. We're still working on pulling them together, but this kind of just shows a few things. It's kind of a messy Google image, but it does show it kind of shows the state of affairs right now. And yeah, and it shows why it does take a while to get stuff done. There's a lot going on down there that needs work. But so we're looking at an interlocal agreement with a modification with the City of Bellingham to help with the board mill building project's layout. So just as a reminder, the interlocal agreement is one of those agreements that was adopted with the sub-area plan. It's an agreement between the port and city that details who does what, when, and how. So who's responsible for parks, roads, cleanup, and infrastructure, and when they will happen. And so because the parks is part of the city's responsibility, when the board mill group proposed their project that included this area, but they also had a building in this footprint that overlaid with some areas that were slated for parks. But they, working with the parks team and the board mill group, they're still looking at providing a connection through. But rather than having a larger park here, one of the things that had been missing, the city had wanted for a long time, was a connection up to the waterway. So from this lower portion, not just along the road, but through a kind of a separated park-like aspect up to the larger parks that'll be along the waterway. So the board mill group and the city all worked on kind of how to, and the port, to kind of pull this together. And the proposed interlocal agreement will modify those park footprints to allow for the board mill building to overlay what was park and then readjust some of these areas that will go north-south and connect that park. So the city staff, parks team really likes that. The board mill group likes it because it provides kind of park space along their buildings, and it's a really aesthetically good way to do it. And it maintains the same acreage of parks that were originally planned anyway. So there's not really a reduction of any significance. I think there may be a small reduction, but then keep in mind that the board mill project also includes, which we're not really counting, a large park on top of that structure as well. That's going to be a publicly accessible area, not managed by the parks, but managed by Board Mill. So it's actually a net increase in public access in this area. So a really great project, that everybody's supporting. So we're working on that right now, and we're hoping to have that ILA amendment to the City Council and the Port Commission at one of the February meetings. So the last two that I have here that I mentioned was we are planning, and this is a zoomed out version of that same image. Again, shows that there's a lot of work to kind of get this prepped. But what we're looking at is, as this Board Mill project goes forward, kind of building some buffer and transitional buildings between the mixed use downtown and the light industrial and the industrial area in the log pond. And so we currently have some layouts that we're just starting to kind of propose, like how could buildings be situated in there? How would you access them? How could fire work? What's the footprints you need? And we're anticipating, along with the Board Mill building, because along that park footprint, again, these aren't the exact locations, I just kind of showed them roughly, but we'll come back with more detailed images as we get them. The park will also need to have a road along here for fire access for the building that's next to the Board Mill building. So that will be the access road that will then allow us to kind of have store frontages or businesses and parcels along the opposite side of the street. And those are what we're anticipating will be the transitional buildings. And they could be 2-3 story light industrial style buildings like the Kochman buildings here on Roeder or the Squalicum Lofts off the truck route. Another example was the Evil Bikes building in Fairhaven that we've talked about. Those types of structures they look good from the roadside, but they can be job creating, they can do warehousing, they can do manufacturing, a whole bunch of different things that you could do in there. Right now, we don't have tenants, so we're really just mapping the parcels, and that we're going to try to build the utilities and service them and get them shovel ready, so that when the Board Mill projects come online, we can then RFP those for buildings. And we would anticipate that those would stay in Port ownership, and it'd be like a ground leases, but that'll be determined at the time. So that's kind of the area we're looking at for those transitional buildings. And then the last piece that is going to take some effort that we're working on in conjunction with that is that when we do that Whatcom Waterway work and the ASB comes offline, because currently all the stormwater in this area drains over to this pump house here, and then it's pumped over to the ASB. And the ASB is closed off, so that water, there's not enough water to fill it up, it just evaporates off. So all that stormwater is gonna have to be managed. And so what we're looking at is how to put a trunk line to a new outfall that we'll have to permit somewhere along the waterway here, and then look at how we'll do treatments, have grading so that we can have users that can be segregated so they can have their own ISGP stormwater permits and treatment systems before they drop their stormwater into that shared trunk line. So again, a lot of work there. The one thing that then also adds, though, is that we can have a shared access point that comes out to the shipping terminal that would allow for a lease here and a lease here, and then a shared access road that kind of all the cargo coming and going out of there can use. So more to come on that. We have some just very preliminary drawings, but I would imagine at the next commission update we could auger down into those two pieces just to show you a little more graphically what we're really talking about. So that's the Waterfront District update. A lot going on and a lot coming. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I have none at this time. I think that kind of brings us up to speed. Plus, all of us, I think, have been talking with Brian and Rob and the folks and staff about this all along the way. You said we haven't seen anything for a year, but we've had a lot of discussions about the things that are going on there. So all of my questions have been pretty much answered, except I just wanted to make sure you pointed out those blue lines.
Yeah.
Commissioner Shepard?
For the light industrial transition zone, if we're going to maintain ownership of the land, would we be probably building those and then leasing those out after, or are we going to be looking for a private?
I think the model, right, we haven't decided that yet. I mean, I think that's a good commission discussion. I think the model we probably are looking at is that we would probably lease the land and have them build it. I think that can be more cost effective. If there's a tenant that said, hey, no, like the two examples you could use right out here is the All-American Marine. Yeah. We built that and built that into their lease, the payback for that, right? But Kochman, built their buildings and owned their buildings, and we just did a ground lease. So I think both those work. It just depends on the business model. If there's a tenant or a user, and even if there's a user that said, hey, we wanted to purchase it, we'd bring that to the commission to discuss. So all those models are on the table right now. What we're just trying to do is like get them served, get them designed so that we're not having a tenant that says, I'd move in 2 years from now, but we're saying, oh, it's 5 years out. We're trying to get it shovel ready as possible. Yeah.
Okay. And other question, I appreciate the update on Millworks Phase 1 and that applications are open. You didn't talk about Millworks Phase 2 much, and I think it's important to recognize that we are, seeing these highly affordable housing units go in, meeting a, certain area mean income bracket. There's a Phase 2 that's planned for more of a workforce housing that is meeting a bit higher income bracket that is still planned.
That's right. Yeah.
Any update on that project?
No.
for us?
Yeah. Thanks for that. I didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance to connect up with them, so I didn't have anything fresh for you. But I do know that they are also in the design review process with the city. So they're meeting all their, just like the Board Mill Group, they're meeting all their performance requirements with our contract with them. Been trying to schedule a meeting just over the holidays to get an update on where they're at. So I know they're continuing to advance that. They have a contractor on board that is giving them cost estimates as they're developing, and I know they're looking at financing, including the Opportunity Fund financing. So I know it's moving forward, but can get back to the commission when I get a little bit more detail.
Okay. Thank you.
No, well done. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, commissioners.
Okay, with that, that's the conclusion of the Port Commission meeting. And we have one more chance for public comment. If anybody in the audience has thought through the meeting and has a burning desire to say something to the commission, please step to the microphone. Anybody online, just raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you. Yes, ma'am. Your name and
Esther Tachude, and in talking about the affordable housing, I was wondering if there is a process that can be done in order to keep this area of town, because we know with the railroad, the history of Bellingham, that's been a pretty scuzzy neighborhood, difficulty with lots of vagrants coming in, and we're going to have an influx of that. And I'm wondering if the port has made processes that can be done in order to accommodate the influx of people and take care of the individuals that are coming in, to keep it safe community and safe housing with new low-income housing that's going to be needed. And I'd like to see it kept down and not taken up any further, because that's a tremendous difficulty for a large segment of Bellingham. But thank you for the work you're doing. It looks good.
thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online? Oh,
Hi, Sarah Gardner. So talking to Resources about this dredging project, and you answered the question about where the material is going to be stored. But one question was with the eelgrass, because can you explain, when you dredge it, all the eelgrass is going to be displaced. So will it be replanted, or can you just comment on that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, yeah, there shouldn't be any dredging in areas. The question was, where if there's eelgrass impacts from the dredging from the Whatcom Waterway Phase 2 cleanup, what would happen there? But there shouldn't be any dredging in areas where there's existing eelgrass. And if so, there is a mitigation through the federal permitting process. There's a mitigation requirement for that. So we do have another project that's a cleanup project down by the Salish Landing Park that I had mentioned, where we will be capping and impacting a fair amount of eelgrass. And there's a requirement to mitigate that and replant it. And we have a whole plan on each site would be a little differently, but that example will harvest shoots before the cleanup happens, store them in another location over the course of the year, move them back, and then there's a survivability rate that's required to mitigate at more than 1 to 1. So it's like a 1 to 1.3% or 1 to 1.3 ratio that has to survive over the period of time. So there's requirements from the federal agencies to mitigate for any eelgrass impacts. That project, though, the Whatcom Waterway, really shouldn't. When I mentioned that eelgrass bed, that's just an existing one that's really highly functioning, and that's not going to be impacted at all. It's more that those are where the fish like to hang out, so we want to make it easy for them to hang out there and still get through and around the inside of the breakwater of the ASB. There are other areas of shallow habitat, but really none that have really well-established eelgrass beds now. Inside the log pond, which is another area where we did projects in the past, we have done that mitigation and saw a really high success rate of recolonization of the eelgrass beds there too. So it's a successful, tried and true kind of process. It's not easy, but it's been done. And I'd be happy to talk with you more after this if you're curious. Yeah.
All right, anyone else? No? All right, on to other business.
Don't be bad.
Well,
Lots of faces I don't recognize.
he doesn't bite. You look like you're going to say something.
Well, I'd like to introduce a couple new port employees. So Tiffany or Dave, would you introduce your new employees?
Good afternoon. Dave Order, Marine Terminal and Emergency Services Manager. And we have two new security specialists who we've been talking about for the last year, started yesterday. And I'll just have them raise their hands. That's Shamus Harith and Joshua Tiller that are currently drinking from a fire hose and learning as much as they can about the marinas. So I'll welcome them.
And just an anecdotal, the reports back on the security operations here at the port have been outstanding. I've gotten personally some tremendous feedback for the presence and the security that people are feeling around the port. So thank you for bringing this to the port.
Welcome aboard, gentlemen.
One more thing, sorry. If I could just put a plug in. So we currently, last year, hired 6. This is 2 additional, so that'll be 8. And then we're hiring for 2 more, so that's just a little recruiting plug. Those are open.
It hasn't gone unnoticed. Our customers are really responding well to it. So, great job. Welcome.
I've been around the harbor my entire life, and in the last 4 months, I've had nothing but good comments from the members in our harbors about our security people, and what a great job they're doing, and how cordial they are and interested in what's going on. So that's what we like to see. Thank you.
Other business?
I've got a couple items. First, I think I saw Kip here. Hi, Kip. We had a fair bit of snow recently, and we've received a few questions about one. I think some compliments to the team. The runway looked really good. I think our team did a great job of getting that runway cleared so that the airport was operational. So a good job to the team. We did get some questions about the de-icer and ownership of the de-icer capacity, and who is responsible for providing adequate de-icing capacity to make sure that planes can take off as expected.
Hey, good evening. Kip Turner, Director of Aviation. I think you're probably referring to in that question the de-icing for the aircraft itself.
Yes.
That would be the airlines and the companies that they hire for that. So we do use a lot of equipment and a lot of materials, including liquids and dry chemical for the runways and things that we are responsible for. But for the aircraft, it's actually the airlines and the companies that they hire to. Sometimes the airline does it themselves, and sometimes they have companies that they hire for that.
So if it's the airline's responsibility, do we feel that they have adequate equipment to meet the demand? Or can we compel them to purchase more modern equipment if it's under capacity or of age that is questionable?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as do they have what they need to meet the demand now, I mean, it's pretty much relative to the environment in which they are. In a daily snow event environment, no. In the environment where we are now, where we have limited events, as I understand it, I'm still the new guy, but I understand these are limited events. They did a pretty good job for where they are now. There was one or two instances that you might be referring to that I was actually witness to because I was there day and night for the entire week, but they were abnormalities, I would say. They had equipment malfunctions and they had staff issues also going on at the same time, if it's the couple of things I think you might be referring to. But
it seemed like there was one or two flights that were delayed by several hours, and it seemed like the de-icer was part of the culprit.
Yeah,
I know we can't prevent all delays, but if it's an equipment issue that we're able to see investment in to be more reliable, I know it's inconvenient anytime people get delayed for hours on tarmac.
Yeah, no, the one that I'm aware of for several hours, the others were pretty nominal, but the one I'm aware of for several hours was really a maintenance issue. So it was a maintenance issue on the aircraft. And then when they went to de-ice it, they realized the maintenance issue was not resolved, so they had to go back and do more on the maintenance issue on the aircraft, and then they had to de-ice it again. So it probably gave the impression to the customer or to the passenger that it was a de-icing issue when it really wasn't. That aircraft had actually had a bird strike coming in on its prior flight, and they didn't realize it till they were doing their pre-flight to take off, and then they had to orchestrate the maintenance repair for that. So I believe if that's the one you're talking about. And then there was another one where an aircraft wheels froze up. The brakes froze up on the wheels after it had sat there overnight. So a similar example happened on that. They had de-iced the aircraft thinking they were good to go, and then when they went to do the pushback, they realized the wheels were frozen or the brakes were frozen, so they had to have maintenance crew come out and basically unfreeze the wheels. So it was definitely a unique event from what I understand. I'm in Colorado. This is not so unique, but I mean where I came from. But the equipment and so forth is more relative to that area as well. But I think for what we have and what I saw in this event, assuming the events are unique and not reoccurring as often as are very often, I think we're pretty well. I think the response was pretty well, minus the couple of maintenance issues which you would have had either way.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't necessarily control maintenance issues.
No.
I think for me, my concern is just making sure we have adequate equipment, and if it's your assessment that our equipment, whether it's airport-owned or airline-owned, is adequate, I'll trust your judgment there. But I would want you to let us know if you feel that even airline-owned equipment isn't adequate. We get the PR questions, we get the emails.
Yeah.
And so the public doesn't know or necessarily need to care who owns the equipment. They just want to get out of the airport on time. Yeah,
no, I totally understand. We get them as well, and I did go speak with the station managers at those two airlines for those two aircraft and got an in-depth understanding of what was going on with the aircraft. And when I realized it was something that was not in their control, I realized it's just one of those fluke moments that we're having where more things are happening at once. Usually when it rains, it pours, so it did. But no, I think for the number of events that I think we have here, from what I'm being informed, I think we're probably on a good path. We could always do more, and we can always strive for more. From airport perspective, the airlines, again, that's an individual thing, and we encourage, and they have their own interest, by the way, of making sure their needs are met. they have very rapid turns that they need to perform to keep their system from having a domino effect. So they're usually not very hesitant at all. If they see they're in a environment that requires more equipment or requires different services, airlines are usually pretty proactive. They're private companies. They're for profit. They're here to make money. So when they see that they have a continuing issue that's something they can control, they're usually pretty good on their own about fixing their problems on the things they control. They can control. Yep. Any other questions on the airport?
I have one. Is any of that controlled by the FAA? They have to have a certain level of fluid on hand, or any of that under any FAA regulations?
No, it's really not. No, it's. I mean, the FAA has guidelines about how certain chemicals and things that can be used, but no, they don't control volumes or equipment or anything like that as far as amount of something to be used.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to check in on the comment at the beginning of the meeting about the multimodal pedestrian trail around
Yes.
the airport. Do you have any feedback for us going forward? I understand it.
Sounds pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I had expressed a comment like that to Rob in a prior discussion he and I had. And I believe I've even sent an email to an individual, but I can't remember who. Still new, trying to figure out who everybody is, but I believe I have had an email back and forth with someone that has an interest in trying to set up a meeting to discuss that. So no, I think there's opportunity there, and look forward to having that discussion.
Anybody else? Anything else at airport?
Not a question you would have gotten in Vail. Just saying.
Let's see, I've got a couple others. I wanted to check in. Rob, are you guys available to talk about the pier in Blaine at all with us, or do you want to set that up for another meeting? We've had a lot of comments and questions from the public, mostly residents in Blaine, about access to the pier. We've been doing this. Kurt has been managing a open space assessment from the public, and that's one that's piqued a lot of interest. We've been talking about getting access out to Jorgensen Pier improved for quite some time, and wondering if you have an update for today or want to set that for another meeting.
Yeah, I think we have scheduled for the second meeting in February a Blaine update, and it'll be more inclusive than just the pier. We'll be talking about the entire industrial area, but the pier should certainly play into that. I don't know when that survey ends, but maybe by then we'll have some results. Yeah, so hopefully we'll have some preliminary results from the survey then too that we can share at that time. But yeah, we'll schedule that for the second meeting in February if that's okay with the commission.
Yeah, it's okay with me.
Correct.
20.
My last one, maybe for Dave or Tiffany. I'm wondering when our next scheduled ship at the terminal is with ABC, and if we have any updates on mitigation strategies that we may be working on in collaboration with our tenant.
Sure. Again, Dave Warder, Marine Terminal and Emergency Services Manager. As of right now, we do not have another vessel scheduled. We've been meeting with ABC almost on a weekly basis, minus this last snowstorm. We skipped a week. They're really looking to load out the next ship after the dredging. So once the dredging is completed, they can pull the vessel up against the dock, and operations will change significantly. And on those weekly meetings, two of the main topics we discuss is the sound noise mitigation and the stormwater / track out onto the facility from the log pond into the shipping terminal. And those are both, we're having good conversations. One of the recommendations that had come forward from our noise consultant that we hire during each vessel had made some recommendations that ABC intends to implement before the next vessel. It's basically adding more containers to actually, and angling them different to actually reverberate the sound and not channel it up the hill, which apparently is what may have been happening. So it may not have had as big of an effect as we had hoped. So that intends to be in place before the next vessel. And we're talking about several items about the track out on the vehicles coming onto the shipping terminal, one of which the items is whether it's a wheel wash is in discussion, also paving. They've made efforts to mitigate the source. There's several dips and curves over there, so they've tried to address where the mud is being generated. And then, like I said, there's several different options, all of which we intend to have in place before the next vessel.
I just want to add to that a couple. They're also going to put rubber mats under the metal plates that are on the pier in hopes that dropping the metal onto that metal plate will be acquired if it has a rubber mat underneath it. And finally, they're going to stop work at midnight, and you've all heard that, but we have yet to have a ship come in where any of these things have been implemented. So that's one of the messages we're trying to give to the city council who's considering a noise ordinance, is that these things need to be tried and tested before we pass a noise ordinance.
Yes, there's several different items, but the two big ones have been the noise and the track out on the facility.
Okay. So, yeah, I think kind of the overall kind of picture is we are continuing to work on mitigation strategies with our tenant. We recognize impacts that occur with this operation, and we're continuing to try and respond. Okay. Well, appreciate that, and I think that's a good message to make sure we're continuing to communicate. I hope we communicate that to some of the groups that have raised concerns, the neighborhood group. I think that would be useful for them to hear as well.
Will do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's it for me for now.
Did you notice it was Marine Terminals Day at the Port Commission? Somebody didn't get the memo.
That's okay, Kip. I got BLI.
Commissioner Briscoe.
Yeah, a couple things. Huge fire in Ilwaco, Washington yesterday and last night, and then actually it finally burned out at 4:30 this morning.
Bornstein's facility.
Huh?
It was Bornstein's
Yeah, it was
facility.
a Bornstein's facility, and our commercial crab season starts on the 29th of this month. And I think there's about 30 folks impacted down there that lost all their crab gear.
Thousands of pots.
I think they said between 5,000 and 7,000 pots were destroyed. So, but it brings to mind our harbor and our web houses. One of the reasons they couldn't put out those fires is because of the lines of the buoys and the rubber on the pots, the creosote, the pilings, and all of that stuff. But I think that something like this goes on, it makes you want to think that maybe we need to look at our fireproofing in our facilities and make sure that we're up to snuff and doing things we can, which brings me to something I spoke about, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a locker for a lot of years until I built my own building on my property, and I keep my stuff there, and I don't do it there, and I should. We got flammable materials in these lockers, we all know we do. We need to, I don't know if the port needs to put forward and fireproof lockers for storing your paint in your cans and each web locker individually. I've brought this up before and we never really went anywhere with it. And I certainly think we need to go somewhere with some things to make sure we don't have any accidents. I mean, the guys are pretty good. They've all got their gear in there and they try and watch things, but there's a reason they call things accidents. It just happens. So in those little storage cabinets that you can put paint and turpentine and things that can cause accidents, and keep it separated from the crew member that's smoking a cigarette and walks by and drops it, and so on and so forth. So I knew that'd get you up.
Tiffany DeSimone, Director of Maritime. Thanks for that, Commissioner. We'll be coming to Commission within the next couple months. Harbor staff has been working for probably about the last 3 months and doing a pretty thorough web locker audit. So we'll be checking for all of that kind of stuff, whether those web lockers are meeting our rules and regs and whether our rules and regs are still current and if there's Commission direction to change those. So we will be coming forward to Commission with that information and preparing customers that's happening, just to make sure that we're using those.
Thank you. Point Roberts, that red-headed stepchild. Not really, but, we tried to do some things up there when I first became a commissioner, which was over 8 years ago now, we never could figure what we could do to help them get off the ground with some economy there. Most of that, well, I shouldn't speak out of turn, but I think a great percentage of Point Roberts is owned from folks to the north there. And but there's a handful of local people there, more than a handful, I guess. And they keep asking, what can we do for them? Can we help them? Can we do anything? And we haven't had a discussion about Point Roberts in a long time. And I think we need to have a serious discussion if there's anything we can do to help, or maybe we need to hold a commission meeting on Point Roberts and let those people come and speak to us at a commission meeting about, what they think we need to do for them or what we can do for them. I know there's been talk of the boat launch on the west side of the point there, but it gets destroyed every year. And, I know people have talked about selling that marina. We've entertained maybe owning that marina at some point in time, and then maybe we could do more things there. I'm not entirely sure, but I can't go like this any longer. We need to do something to try and figure something out there.
Yeah, we've got a couple things going in Point Roberts that I don't think we're getting credit for. One is we're working with the PUD, and the PUD is the lead on Point Roberts, whereas we're the lead on other geographical areas. But this is on installing broadband. So the PUD is going to get broadband out there. They've got some grant money to do that with, and they're going for EDI funding to finish that up. So we're in support of that. Gina works very closely with them on how we're designing our networks, and they'll design theirs similarly. So that's broadband. We're also looking at a CURB grant. There's a group up there wants to do a feasibility study for kind of a in-living senior center, and they need a feasibility study for that. And we essentially agreed to provide the match money for that grant. I want to say that's to the tune of about $15,000 or something. Their grant is, I think, $75,000, and it's a 20% match. So they're going to be going forward with that application. That again, Gina's leading the charge on that one. And then, as you mentioned, we've been in talks with the marina owners. They're not a willing seller at this point. We think they will be at some point. We think the reason they're not a willing seller is because there's many owners and they're not all on the same page. But as the ownership consolidates, which it is doing, I expect that property will come on the market.
Yeah, I think, there's some folks up there that are trying to figure out how they can get some kind of economy going, and they can have some handful of jobs around there so their families might be able to stay there. That type of thing. I mean,
Can I recommend that we have that discussion on the 20th when we do Blaine?
Sure,
And maybe
yeah.
let's just move the whole commission up to Blaine like we've done in the past.
Okay.
And have the commission meeting up in Blaine and bring the Point Roberts perspective down and have that discussion at that time.
I'm good with that.
And we have, I'm not sure how much more there is to say about Blaine other than what we've said here. We're also working with the county on that boat launch. We've had many discussions with the county parks on the boat launch out there, and the county is interested in doing it. They're not saying no. As you said, there's challenges to it because it does wash away. But if it was put inside the marina, that might not be an issue anymore. But you're trying to put a boat launch in a privately owned marina, it gets a little tricky.
That's where it needs to go.
I don't know what else we could talk about on Point Roberts that we would do at the
I
second
think a
meeting.
lot of it is just getting the word out there of how much we're doing already, right, in a lot of these areas, especially in the areas that we're trying to do some of this public education about is how much are we actually already doing. The community just needs to hear it. Because you're right, I don't think Point Robert understands how much, we really do and have done. But I think if we can get it all out there in the public, I think it helps everybody.
Well, there's some clear interest in seeing more infrastructure, and I'm just not quite sure if it's necessarily us because we don't own property up there. So the county does. There is a county park, and there could be opportunity for increase some of this public access boat launch type stuff. People are asking us because we do boats, and we do marinas, and we do public access to the
They're
water.
asking us because their tax dollars come to this place as well. Now,
And they are.
it may not be a great amount because there's not a lot of area there, but it's still that person's tax dollars, just like any other person in the county. So, they think that they want to see something for their tax dollar, and I can't say no because, that's our job.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have, I've been up there, I've driven around, I've been showed around, I've talked with folks, and they're trying to get their hotel thing, their restaurant hotel thing started. I mean, it's a very difficult piece of property to deal with because it's disconnected. it's disconnected from the mainland USA, basically, by the border. So it's a hard one, you know, and I think, I don't know if we can help with tourism in any manner, to get something going that way, I think is maybe an angle we can help with. I'm not saying we have to do something great there, but anything we can help the people with, and maybe they just don't understand it. If they come to us and they got something figured out that we can help them with, maybe we just need to convey that and let them know that, you know, we're trying to think of something. But I've been thinking for 8 years now, and I can't figure out what you're going to do there unless we own that marina. Then we can really do something.
That'd be a game changer.
It would, so, but we don't own it yet.
Well, there's a lot of communities in the county that we don't have a presence in, right? But they benefit from our marinas. Someone in Everson keeps a boat in our marina. They fly out of BLI. They use our parks. They come down to the 4th of July festival. They come down to Sea Feast. So, I mean, there's a lot of benefit the port does to the communities. Just because we don't have property there doesn't mean they don't see a benefit.
Right, but them being disconnected, they don't have the ease of coming to use our facilities as well as the rest of the people in the county. I mean,
True,
it's a difficult issue. I don't have any answers for it yet.
And I think we'll discuss this a little bit more on the 20th, but at some level, you choose to live there.
Well,
Right.
yeah, it's true.
So there is a choice to be made, and we do our part. I mean, we certainly provided them a tremendous amount of support during COVID.
Oh, no, I'm
So
not saying we
it's
haven't.
not like they're not on our radar screen and that we're not trying to do something. It's just letting everybody know how much we do and what it means, and then the perspective. Yeah, I'll say it. But if we can do that on the 20th, too. And are you guys okay going up to Blaine? See, the last time we did this, I agreed to go to Blaine, and then I'm the one who was showing up here when you guys were all ready to meet in Blaine.
Well, and the technology is difficult. It's really difficult to transfer this technology up to there. It's just way easier to meet on, especially when we're going to do something that's as interactive and as we're talking about, where we're going to talk about Blaine infrastructure, where we can pull it up on the screens here. It gets really difficult in the room.
I'll pull that back.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, I'll pull that back.
So now we're not going to Blaine?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm just gonna talk out of it.
that's fine. I said Point Roberts,
Whoever
and you
said-
stopped in Blaine.
Anybody who said I was. What's next?
Well, the last thing I got, and we've talked about it a few times, and I've talked with staff, and we've kicked it around, but we never really got the ball moving, and I think we're gonna have to get the ball moving, as what are we gonna do with the maintenance shop? You know, and I think we need to start really thinking about that hard and get to moving, because if we have other customers come, we're gonna need all the area we have at the shipping terminal.
Yeah, and we're aware of that. And Alex has actually identified his choice piece of property that he'd like to move to. He's not here, I don't think. Oh, he is here. Yeah, there he is. He's got a piece. He's
Redondo Beach or what?
yeah.
Okay, so we're
It's on our radar. You know, it's going to take some budget money, but it is definitely on our radar to build them a new facility, more than likely up by the airport on a piece of property that's really underutilized and very appropriate for it. And then that'll open up that maintenance shop to be joined to the shipping terminal. I'm going to warn you that there's some folks think that should be a yacht club, so we're going to get a little bit of pushback there. But I very much, and I think staff would like to see that be adjoined to the shipping terminal for future customers.
we don't have enough ground there for the business that I think is going to come. So that's all I have.
Okay. Then mine is going to be a continuation of what we did before. First of all, I want to say I did do a tour of Northline with Carrie yesterday. What an amazing operation that is. That boat is going to be a game changer. And I see that growing substantially over the years. I think that's going to be a tremendous addition to what we have here from a business standpoint. And I can't wait for it to get painted and go on its first journey, because it'll be something to watch. But yeah, you guys have both seen it?
I did the tour, yeah.
Yeah.
A
Phenomenal.
couple months ago, though. It's probably changed a lot.
It has. It's, yeah, it's a good looking.
They're going down
to a dry dock to get painted, yeah.
All right, the second one is, let's go with the Blaine meeting here on the 20th. And then if we could just allocate just a little bit more time to have some internal discussion, or at least incorporate it in the meeting. Just know we're going to just talk about some things at length. You've been in charge of Blaine for a long time, and just maybe time to get caught up and have some in-depth discussions about big.
I don't know if I've been in.
Big, yeah.
That's
yeah.
my zone, let's put it that way.
Yeah. So just be aware that maybe on the 20th there'll be some more questions, and I'll probably spend some time with Rob and the rest of the staff discussing what that should look like as we go forward. And then the last one is, I want to really get ahead of the industrial property discussion. And it's not really appropriate for the city or the county to have a committee designed to do an industrial property or industrial zoning. But in front of the comprehensive plan update that the county is going to go through, I'd like to bring a group of people together, as I've discussed in the past, of interest holders, that stakeholders that would discuss industrial property and what it looks like and what it means to this community. And it would involve city council, county council, neighborhood, somebody from the MNAC, the Mayor's Neighborhood Advisory Committee. And I'm going to propose to have MNAC, yeah.
How about the PMAC?
All of those, and
Marine
the Working
Authority
Waterfront,
Committee?
Working Waterfront Association, the PUD, just the interested stakeholders in what that looks like, and would like to have that committee convened and have commission approval for some of those members to go out. Maybe go to the city council and say, we need you to have somebody appointed to that committee, but really discuss at length what industrial property means to us, what it should look like. The discussion, I think I've said this before, the discussion's always been industrial property isn't ruining the quality of life for the housing community. Really what it is the housing communities have encroached on industrial property. We've got a limited amount of industrial property. And if we're going to start going through zoning, we're going to have the comprehensive plan debated. We're going to have planning commissions talking about it. We really do need to have an educated base, discuss this at length, and go with recommendations to the county for their industrial zoning. And I'm proposing a list, and I think I sent that out. I'm going to pull it up here in just a minute. You don't have it at your fingertips, do you, Rob? That included the city council. I've had a discussion with Michael Lilliquist. He said that he would like to do this. It's pretty much something that they would like to see the port do. It's pretty hard to have that industrial discussion without a neutral party, and we are a neutral party. We're not responsible for any of the zoning. They are. We're not responsible for any of the regulations or any of the infrastructure. So really, it's us that is a good body for that. And I would like to hold the first meeting sometime in February. It goes hand in hand with the noise ordinance that is coming down from the city council. The city is clearly looking to limit the amount of noise that goes into these areas. So how do we discuss what industrial ground is good for? We just had a discussion with Brian about parks around an industrial park. That deserves some discussion. What is the impact of a park on an industrial piece of property, right?
You already know what I've.
Yeah, and I just think all of that needs to be discussed as we start talking about all of the planning that's going to happen in the comprehensive plan and throughout the rest of the waterfront. And so as I looked at this, I'll probably send it again to Rob and just put a proposed list of people who, or organizations that should be involved in that discussion. And then talk to you two about who else you think needs to be involved in it, if that's okay. And yeah,
Got it here. I've got it here. City Council, County Council, Labor, Working Waterfront Coalition, Business and Commerce Committee, Light Industry, Heavy Industry, Housing Advocacy Group, PUD, Environmental Advocacy Group, and the Tribes.
so that was my beginning list of people that should be sitting around the table.
Thank you. Are you including our tenants would be covered under the Working Waterfront Coalition?
Yeah.
Because I think that there may be some that
Well,
might not belong?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me look at tenants that are not a part of that group and probably grab a representative from them as well.
I think that, I think it's very important that we have all our tenants that are not just the ones that belong to an
Yeah.
association.
And there's a member of the city and the county who
Yep.
agreed to participate in that. And not only just Michael, but also Skip has agreed to help shepherd some of that. So I think just getting those interested party to the table to talk about industrial ground before we start taking action on industrial ground probably should have happened before the ordinance went before the county council, to be fair. But there are impacts that industry has on properties. And quite frankly, if we're going to start rezoning industrial property, we should be looking for a trade of like for like. And what does that mean? And where does industrial property belong? How does it fit into those neighborhoods? What buffers need to be put in place? One of the most egregious things that I think about is it's real easy to put low-income housing around an industrial park because they're the ones that don't complain, right, about the noise of an industrial park, and that's just, to me, repugnant. You don't put your
I would agree.
lowest
It's
income.
ridiculous.
You don't put your lowest income people around those areas just because they won't complain. So how do we structure industrial ground to make it effective, to make it productive, to keep it there for long term without having the impacts on housing and the rest? So that committee, if you guys are in agreement, I would like to put a letter out from us requesting them to join us for that meeting, have a designee from each one of those organizations. Anybody else that you think needs to be a part of it, I certainly would like to be a part of it. I think you two should probably be a part of it as well. But then again, that makes it a public meeting.
If you're going to do this in February, our crab season starts the 1st of February, and I've been waiting 4 months to have some inflow instead of outflow. So I'm going to be really busy the whole month of February because that's traditionally about the season. So if 3 of us aren't there, well, 2, I guess 2 is still a public meeting.
Still a public meeting.
Yeah. So if I'm going to attend, I'd like it to be the latter part of February if we can do that, because that'll free up maybe some days.
Or we could just have a designee from the
I think it'd be better if one of you was on it, because otherwise we could have all the city council members there, all the county. Pretty soon it's
I'll give you my
unmanageable.
voice.
Well, and then if I can't be there, or if there's an issue that you can, we can certainly we can trade off.
So as long as we're talking about these areas about around our industrial areas, parks really kind of on the waterfront kind of rub me the wrong way. I don't mind access. I think access is great, but there's a huge difference between park and access. Park is a big area where everybody can sit around and play or walk their dogs where they want to do. Access means you can take a walk and you can walk around that area, you take your dog, whatever. But when we talk about parks, parks takes up square footage. Parks take up jobs on the waterfront. Access doesn't. Access allows the people to go around, be around. So then the drawings I see, and they're always green. Brian does that for me, I think. The green shows up, and I don't have a problem with people accessing things, but I have a problem with giving square footage that can put people to work away for somebody to sit around and gaze out onto the bay. That I have a problem with, That we have a lot of waterfront parks already, and now we're considering putting more in our industrial zone because the city says they want more parks. Well, if the city wants a lot more parks, start tearing down your buildings in the middle of the city and put parks there. It's the same thing you're asking us to do, displace jobs so people can sit around. I don't think we have a shortage of parks around here. I think we've got a lot of parks, and we're probably going to have some more. But how much industrial land on the waterfront do we need to give up for parks? I think that should be part of the discussion.
It certainly can be. We are committed to a certain acreage of parks in the waterfront, and we can move those around a little bit, but at the end of the day, we have to have a certain acreage of parks, because that's in the agreements with the city.
Well, that's the part that needs to be discussed, the agreement. That agreement was made a long time ago.
Well, and that's the purpose for the group.
And I think for those, I can see benefits of people being in proximity to working spaces because it helps them appreciate what's going on there, that real people are going down there. It's not just land that's set aside and sitting idle, because that's not what's happening. We want people to be in touch with the fact that there's real jobs associated, there's real work happening, there's real products being manufactured and work being done. And I think that's good for people to know and be able to see. And so it's not kind of a mystery of what's happening. I think we've got an uphill battle trying to broadcast this message that our working waterfront is important. I think we've lost some traction with the continued questions about ABC's operations. And I think we just have to go into a bit more of a full court press on the importance of our working waterfront. Something that I think maybe some of us took for granted for a little bit about public support for our working waterfront, and an area that I think we really need to lean into. And part of that may be getting people down there to see it. And so I really appreciate when we do have public open space, public park, that we include signage and education so people can learn about what they're seeing and about what they're near. And so we may not always have a choice on some of our installations of public space. We have some requirements there we're working under. And so hopefully we can use them for educational purposes as much as possible when we do.
That's the access part.
One of the nice things about what the Board Mill Group has done is that they're touting the fact that that area above their parking garage will actually be an overlook onto the working waterfront. And they're excited about the fact that you can actually go to the top of that building and watch work happen on the waterfront. They think they're excited about how interesting that's going to be to their project. So yeah, all of that is part of that discussion. But if we can get that going and maybe have the letter go out in a couple of weeks and maybe a March starting timeframe, and we'll do it up in our boardroom and.
February's too
And
soon.
the reason I say that is because we're talking about rezoning for industrial, and that's what we're doing when we put parks in the middle of industrial areas. We're already rezoning it when we're agreeing to take industrial space away and give it to a park area. And I don't have a problem with people accessing and being able to walk around, what have you, and maybe an area here, but when you start taking big areas of industrial property and setting it aside for grass to grow, then I have issues.
Yeah, my problem is we're in a housing shortage, so there seems to be a grab for any area that's within the city and county limits that looks like it would be appropriate for housing. But we've got to at least send a message that industrial ground needs to be preserved and that we need to put appropriate buffers around that industrial ground to keep it working, and then let the county and the cities decide what they're going to do with their housing elsewhere. But that can all be discussed with those people at the room. We only have one shipping terminal. It just happens to be where it is. And we're not going to build another one. So,
And I don't think there's as much dissension, Michael, as you think about our working waterfront. There's a handful of people in a certain spot that have been interrupted and they don't like it. And they've been running around saying things that aren't true, spreading incorrect facts, that they call them facts, they're incorrect. So I think if you polled most of the county, you'd find that they support the working waterfront. There's just a handful of people that are annoyed who are trying to annoy more people so that they have a bigger group.
Yeah. That misinformation, it really bothers me, though. It really bothers me.
We used to call it lying, now it's just misinformation.
Yeah, it's hard to get on top of. It's just an ongoing process for us.
fear is a hell of a motivator. All right, with that being said, we'll work on putting something together and we'll go from there. Other than that, that's all I think I've got for my other business. Anything else last minute?
Anybody else want to say anything before we?
That's not your call. Anybody else want to say anything? Meeting adjourned.
Good.